we
Okay.
can do that.
There we
You all
go.
set? All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 4:04 PM. Welcome, everybody, to this project, which somehow has gotten run amok. It's all out of control, and we're not certain where anything is, or where it is, or why it is, or where we're going. We have received the final proposal from the consultants, so we have, and we need to get together with the planning board somehow and find, within the next week, to discuss the proposal, which should be coming soon, as the last memo said.
This is the one from the consultants.
Right. And we were denied the grant money, so we have no money for the follow-up, visioning exercises.
We have enough money for one,
Right,
and we haven't hit, that one's the one we canceled.
Right.
it'll be on the 17th. We didn't cancel it, we postponed it till November.
Okay.
So, the first thing is, we don't have money to go 3 sessions. My position has been all along, once we get the initial session, we can either have a video and show the video 2 more times and be there to answer questions, or we can give the presentation. I don't think there's gonna be any problem between the 2 committees having enough expertise to answer any questions that are gonna come up.
And the 2 committees being the planning board?
Planning board
Yes.
and this committee.
The only thing is, the planning board and this committee has to agree first.
Right, but, well, right now, we're getting our ducks in a row. So we're gonna get steamrolled again. And unfortunately, our chair is in Italy tonight, so.
Well, fortunately
add
for him, right?
To the pleasure of this activity. So, how does everybody feel about that? What to do about sessions 2 and 3? Giving the consultants will not do it for less than another $4,000, which I think is excessive personally.
We should be able to handle it, shouldn't we?
I think so.
I think, given, for $4,400, yes, if they said an extra 1,000 because we're gonna drive and maybe, but,
If there was a question or comment or something that we couldn't possibly answer for whatever reason, then I think we can tell them, we'll find out the answer and put it on the Lyme listserv. That this was the question, not answerable at the time, and here is our finding. And handle it that way, I would think.
So long as you also tell them you can't respond to any follow-up questions. Because then you can't do business, committees can't do business over
Well,
the-
wouldn't be a committee, this
Oh.
would be from the visioning, from the exercise with the public. If there was somebody, a member of the public had a question that couldn't be answered, and we researched the information and then sent the information out to everybody. I mean, it's not a committee, it's a public information awareness thing.
Great.
So,
And if they told us we shouldn't do it, we won't do it again. But
there's no problem with
I
that.
understand.
So,
Are the consultants still willing to consider whatever data we gather at these follow-on visioning sessions and whatever final analysis that they do?
I'm not certain about that.
Because that seems to be and that to me would seem to be the most important factor, because why have these additional sessions at all if they're not going to include the data gathered at them in their analysis?
Well, we will have the first one.
Right. But it seems to me the sampling
And I
from
don't- yeah.
one might be
Right,
troubling.
so we can have, but, I don't know the answer to that question.
If they would agree to at least use the data, then it seems to me that it would be worth our attempt at facilitating the additional visioning sessions ourselves.
Well, it seems to me that we have agreed we're gonna have one, they've agreed to that. If they did that, they, I believe, have agreed to take the data from that session and incorporate it into our database. So we're beyond the first step, and I think that we probably should be able to take the information from the second and third and
Incorporated ourselves even if.
Or we can forward it to them,
Forward
they can
it to them,
incorporate it
sure.
in their final report.
and they can, and say, this is what we recommend, or we don't know, what do you, but I think that we can get an interchange with them. Their main cost is they're a long way away.
I don't know what their costs are. I can ask, after their visioning, after their one forum, they still have to provide us with a final report. So if we can get them to agree to accept any new information from the last two forums to include in their final report, that would pretty much cover it.
And if not, at worst, the committee can add an addendum
Right.
analyzing the
Right.
original data.
Right.
So, again, when will the first meeting be at this point?
October 17th.
It's,
I
it
think we'll
is
be
listed
ready.
here as 4 to 6,
Right.
so not 7 to 9. We thought about having the first session 7 to 9.
Right, but we decided just to take the first session and move it to the end. So we'll
Okay.
have two 7 to 9s
Okay.
and keep this one for the people who can't drive at night.
So the first session is going to be 10/17,
At 4 o'clock,
okay.
What date is that?
4 to 6.
Day of the week?
It's,
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday, I think.
Yes, Wednesday, yes.
I'm in the West Coast, so.
And we will have everything ready for that by then? That's not that far away.
Oh, of course we will. Whatever we have, it will be ready for that night.
I mean, I think to your point, Mike, I would be somewhat concerned that the only session that we have on which the analysts would be relying, a session from 4 to 6. I think that, I mean, I know that we have different sessions so that people of different ilk can attend, but a 4 to 6 seems to me to exclude every working member of Lyme who has a rigid 9 to 5 schedule.
I hate to interrupt, is there somebody who can give me a jump start? I don't have a truck.
I don't know if you have, do you have cables?
I have cables.
Or David,
Okay, that's a legitimate
I
point.
think that does make sense. I mean,
How
and
does everyone feel?
the choice of the afternoon was just, first one was in the evening, second would be
Right.
in the afternoon, so I don't.
I would recommend changing
Yeah.
it to 7 to
Mhm.
9, because,
And most people, you know, town meetings are 7 to 9 when they seem to get out.
Mhm.
Right?
school meeting.
Okay,
Right.
on the Saturday session, if we can get an agreement to go to Saturday, everybody has soccer games. Are the soccer games in the morning or in the afternoon?
I'm not rec.
Okay, the ones that I go to are afternoon,
Afternoon.
but that's
So,
Hanover High.
Is it a better session, to have a session in the morning or in the
On
afternoon?
a Saturday,
Saturday.
depends on who you wanna get. If you wanna get families, I wouldn't have it on a Saturday. I'd have it during.
Well, some people, working people who work and have kids and are busy schedules can't come during the week. So
Okay.
it was a request that we have it on the weekend.
Oh, okay, then I would say probably you're gonna, what I would do is I'd actually talk to Steve Small, say, you know, like, a week before when there were events where we wanna make sure that we weren't overscheduling it, say to Steve Small, you know, are there any games, and if there are, when are they? Or can you move games off of that date?
Do we want to consider a Sunday?
I,
I don't think
every
so.
time we've talked about that in the past, there are a strong group of people who disagree.
Yeah, I would
Well,
echo that.
although they've also got they got an afternoon session, and they also have an evening session that they could
Well, I
go
think
to.
it's,
So, I mean, it's a little different from, this is the one meeting that you can ever get to, so.
Yeah, I would agree, I don't think Sundays are.
Okay. Besides,
by
it's the
my-
new dump day.
Yeah,
Sundays?
yeah, it's back to Sunday,
Oh, that's good.
can't keep up with it either. I've got a pile of trash in my breezeway and I'm like, well, I can't go Wednesday, no, I can go Wednesday, it's too late now.
Oh, it's not Wednesday anymore?
It is Wednesday.
It's still Wednesday, right?
Still
So it's
Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay, sorry.
Wednesday.
There was a discussion of eliminating Wednesdays. That's gone by the wayside. All right,
So we're looking at a Saturday then,
So-
is what we're saying.
yeah,
So, is that right?
Yes.
And Steve Small can kind of give you a sense of how many other games there are on any given Saturday and what time they would be. And then at least you know the rec games. You might not know the high school games or anything like that. but-
Will this be the first week of November that you're talking about?
November 10th.
Okay, we'll see most of the soccer games are over by then. You're in the playoffs.
Oh,
Ooh.
that's true, yeah.
They're playoffs, but playoffs are worse.
Yeah, not always.
Well, they,
There are fewer of them, fewer weekends of them, but the weekend is encapsulated, you know, from early morning till afternoon, evening. So just give them, give them a call, and Steve will tell you
Okay.
what that
Mhm.
schedule is.
So,
So we had chosen a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Tuesday originally, just to get one of the first 3 days there. So we've got the Wednesday still. Do you want to aim for a Monday at
I
some
thought we
point?
had, what's
17th?
the 30th?
That's a Tuesday. Oh, right, duh.
the 30th is on a Tuesday.
So we got a Tuesday and a Wednesday, is that good enough? And then
17th.
question the Saturday.
Right.
You got him?
Got him, yep.
So we're talking about the third session, and I had a request to have it on the weekend. So
Okay.
that's what we've been hashing around, whether it's better to have it in the morning or the afternoon, and what are the athletics like in the town, and so forth, so. I will check with Steve Small and check that out.
My feeling is you're gonna come back and say, let's not do it on a Saturday. See what he has to say. It's,
But, you
it's-
know, we still have the issue of people who,
yeah, well, also.
I think by the third
If
session.
you're only choosing one date, then it would really be significant, but because
Yeah.
you've got 3 days,
Yep.
And November is a dead month for
It is.
anything.
it's between seasons. It's not
Pre-winter.
basketball. What's that?
Pre-winter.
Pre-winter.
When does basketball start?
It's, they're.
Late November. Late November, right?
Late,
Oh,
before or after Thanksgiving?
The games don't start until late
no,
November.
no, the game's
Well, let's shoot for the 10th, and if it's too busy a time, we can move it to the, but the later we move it, the more difficult it is gonna get to be, have any new information included in the consultant's report.
Right.
Okay. Any other concerns or issues based on any information that we have thus far? I guess the next one that comes up would be the questionnaire. We still haven't seen the final draft of the questionnaire.
Well, I sent one out finally.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and we've sent all that information to them, but we haven't received anything back yet, so until we do.
Well, where I'm at a loss is where, between the two groups, where do things stand? Between the planning board, their thinking, and.
Well, that's,
this
they're
group's
trying to
thinking.
get, John is trying to get together, because our chair has been missing, has been trying to gather a meeting when we can have a joint meeting. But I wanted us to have a chance to talk about this and come to some sort of an agreement so that we can present, this is what we want. So the question is, what night next week can everybody get together with everybody on the planning board?
Pretty much
But
any-
Wednesdays are out because of the budget. See, and that's every
Well,
night.
I prefer not to have it on Tuesday. Any other night's fine. I mean,
Thursday night?
Thursday is the planning board meeting, that's Thursday the 11th. That's the planning board meeting and.
You don't run on a Tuesday. Monday is
Holiday.
Columbus Day, and we're already booked solid with meetings, so. So it's gonna have to be, it has to be Tuesday to Thursday, so. Arrow's not available on Tuesday, everybody else available
Well,
on Tuesday?
normally Tuesday I can miss the band, but we're getting ready for a biggie, so I should be there this particular coming Tuesday.
Joint meeting, Jonathan, can you make either of those dates?
Thursday I might be late, but I could make it.
One for Thursday.
I am fine on, actually, I have that, the LCDC was meeting on the 10th, and I may have gotten the wrong location.
No, we have it down for 4 o'clock, but I don't think it makes any sense. That's our regularly, that's the other
Yeah,
problem.
that's-
We
that's
have
why
regularly
it's in there for the-
scheduled, posted meetings,
I can make any one of the 3 days at this point.
one of, what, 3 days?
The night, the
Ninth?
Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, the
Oh.
9th, the 10th, or the 11th.
Unless it's in the afternoon, because we have budget meetings every Wednesday night for the rest of the
Okay.
year.
Wednesday in the afternoon's all right.
You think
Oh,
that's
yeah,
gonna
Wednesday's
fly
all
by
right
the planning
anytime.
board?
Huh?
You think that's gonna fly by the planning board?
Well,
Rich, what about you?
I could make any of those meetings at 7. Obviously, I could make myself available at 4 on Wednesday. The planning board has, the planning board has what would probably be contentious hearing on the 11th, on that Thursday.
Good,
Um,
great.
So
So we have to,
it would be hard to horn in on that. Or maybe, maybe they would use that as an excuse to move faster.
well, let's recommend, see if the majority of them can come earlier and have a
Mhm.
4 o'clock meeting. Because we're just all crunched up this time of year.
Right. And if we're really gonna go live with a presentation on the 17th,
You can't put it off any
Whoa.
longer than that.
no, I'm sure.
we're already desperately close to the wire. We haven't seen the consultant's final report. If there are serious differences of opinion as to the suitability of the report, what do we do then? If it's, somebody
If they
feels
have-
the numbers are indefensible.
You think that's gonna happen, what are the likelihood do you think that's gonna happen?
The numbers I've seen so far are indefensible.
I agree with that. I'm actually kind of troubled by it, so.
Okay?
When you say indefensible, what do you mean?
I mean, we can go through the workbook if you'd like. I think some of the conclusions that are drawn, I think some of even the statistics as applied to, for example, creating 50 new single-family homes, 50 new units of senior housing, or 50 new condominiums are indefensible. They don't take into account any kind of market demand that might be created.
One of the,
That sort of,
I can
issue.
speak a little to that. The thing that concerns me is that there's no no recognition of Lyme's actual experience of how many kids live in small homes, how many kids live in $250,000 homes, how many live in 450. And that,
It's,
given that school-age population is the significant lever here, and Jeff, I'm not beating up on anybody, given that that's an important part of the town budget, not to have modeled that more carefully is an oversight.
I also, go ahead, Mike, I'm sorry.
well, I was gonna say, I do have a few years' experience. And it's very difficult to use other towns as examples of the number of houses, because Lyme is extremely appealing. And therefore, whatever we look at, we're gonna have more younger families. The younger families are drawn to Lyme, because we are sort of what people would like. I mean, we're rural,
Right.
we have a very good school, and the community works. As much as you can't say the select person. But the
No.
community, but we are still able to talk things through. And so what I'm saying is that younger families, we're gonna have a higher number of kids coming in. So I've had trouble with all of these statistics which say, oh, well, you go down to Lebanon and the houses around Dartmouth Hitchcock only had 0.18 children per whatever it is, I can't remember the number.
Yeah, I think.
It's not reasonable to use
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
I think, they've gotten this feedback pretty forcefully, I think, on several occasions.
See, I haven't had any feedback at all.
They have been getting this. Everything I've gotten, I've sent out to everybody, so, but I think a lot of the feedback has been given back to them.
Okay.
Rich has done it, I don't know that Chris has.
I think David.
David Schaefer has sent some significant information back, and we all did say, you're not using Lyme-centric information, and that needs to be included.
I also thought that their points of comparison, to your point, were not particularly valuable. You know, comparing Lyme's educational expenses to educational expenses in Bath and Lisbon, I mean, is not a valuable comparison. And also even multiplying that, whatever that decimal factor is of students moving to Lyme for the number of housing units that would open, multiplying that times the average cost per pupil is not particularly valuable, because we know that that's not actually what the cost would be to the district.
I have, in my years past, I have spent the last 15, 20 years, most of my board memberships have been down in Concord. And so people look from Concord, I hear how people look from Concord to Lyme, and we don't meet a lot of the others. It's hard to use statistics from the state.
Yeah, my sense was that these people took a canned presentation
Yeah.
that they've done everywhere else,
Popped there
and
and
just
did it.
popped it into
We
Lyme,
just- we
and
just
didn't do
opened the
any
can
work
up and
for
started.
$15,000. We didn't get our money's worth. And I think they got that message loud and clear.
But that's what you get when you get consultants coming in to do this type of highly variable, highly speculative work.
I would suggest that a different consultant might have approached it differently. I think it's a fault of these two.
Water over the dam.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. So it looks like everybody can meet on the Thursday. Does 4 o'clock in the afternoon work?
I can't do that.
You can't do 4.
Can I, would you mind just, as a public member, I just make a couple comments? Just relative to, I think it's this document here. I think a lot of this is, one of the things we need to be careful of when we talk about these things is the connotation of what we're saying and the implications that we're saying. And so some of the things that they have said in this, I think, is misleading. And it's only because as a school and a school board, we've done a lot a lot of this similar work, trying to get a handle on the things that have been, because we want to know this as much, probably more than the town does, because we have to be able to kind of plan for the future without any control over it. So we're looking for all these kind of indicators. And one of the things that we looked at in terms of norming ourselves, in terms of cost per pupil, was relative to other K-8 rural schools with a similar level of educational expectation. So, we're looking at Hanover, we're looking at, going to Piermont, we're looking at Bath, we're looking at these other schools, because they have either, they're a similar cohort, or that they have a similar outcome in terms of expectation. And, we've shown that every year for the last, I don't know how many years, it's one of our slides, and we're usually about third from the bottom. Relative to the state average, it doesn't look anything like that. The state average is $15,000. None of the peer schools that we look at are $15,000. It's because you have Manchester, who's, they're a huge district, and the scale of that district, their cost per pupil is incredibly lower. If we lose students, our costs don't go down as much as our per pupil cost goes up. And so,
Right.
I think that we have to be careful when we have right on the, the top of slide 18, cost per pupil is high. State average is $15,000, Lyme School elementary student is $20,650.
Well, I think there'll be ample opportunity, if they don't change that, based on the feedback, then there'll be ample opportunity for us to speak up to that.
Right, but you never want to put an idea in people's head and then having to defend it when you can communicate it more
Right.
more
And we have.
accurately,
And
more accurately up front.
I think they have that. So we will see when we get, if we can find a time when we can all meet together to, and.
So this isn't the
when
final document?
No, that's
No.
the preliminary,
Okay.
no.
Um,
The
Should
final
say
one-
draft in the front.
The last thing I heard from Steve was it's coming soon.
Well, I just think.
It has to be here.
Yeah, I just think that, I came tonight only because what I don't want to do is I don't want in a public forum argue and come across as defensive or kind of countering information, because we're partners in this solution. And I want to be able to say, yeah, I understand how they came to number X and Y. And I think that there's validity in at least the logic that they applied to that solution. None of us can say what it is, because as I said before in public hearings, we could have 10 new students here. And last year we did, 10 new students, the cost was $0. We could have 2 students here and the cost could be $95,000. It just depends on where those students go. It's the cost of having to split a class and all of those things. So, I did appreciate that in their analysis. They weren't saying the cost of each student was the per pupil cost, because that would be just, that, I would have said you got some charlatans on your hands. But what it seemed like they were trying to do is they were saying, okay, well, it's not the per pupil cost, but it's the per pupil cost spread out over a certain number of students. And so, on average, for each student would be $2,900 or something. I think that was the number I saw. Now, the reality is it's not gonna be $2,900. It's gonna be 0.0000095 or 0.00195. It's all in where the kids fall. That is a very hard thing to say, okay, if we build a house, how much will that cost us in cost, educational cost? It could be 0 for a house of 4, and it could be much more.
Jeff, is there data that the district has that we can maybe use to help inform?
Well, so I shared that with them this summer, and I actually saw that they took some screenshots of it.
The enrollment data specifically.
Right, the enrollment data. The hard part about that is, of course, that, you know, we use it to look a year out, year two out, and then after that, we look at and regard it as highly speculative. But we at least can see, you know, if trends were to follow, where the peaks and valleys are, and utilize those peaks and valleys. I think what they're trying, they may be looking at it as more like, okay, so this will be the data, so any change will be compounded on top of that. And I would not be comfortable with them saying, well, this is the school's data, this is what they said, when, no, this is a tool that we use to speculate outward.
That's all, we don't know what they're gonna say, so
Yeah.
to argue it now without their presentation is.
But if we can provide them data to give them a more informed, I mean, the district uses an
yes.
enrollment algorithm,
Right.
for example, to understand how much we need to deposit in the stabilization fund, for example. And if we use those kinds of values, that will change this, this value in the estimated variable cost
Right.
analyses to better reflect, I think, what the actual cost will be.
So-
I mean, that's all I'm getting at.
Right.
I'm not gonna quibble with this, we know it's not particularly valuable, but if we can, in the meantime, speed things up by giving them more valuable data, I just think we should do that.
At this stage of the game, I think they've gotten all the feedback they can handle. And until we.
Maybe that's why we're not getting
Well,
this
yeah,
feedback.
It's
It's
because
more
they're
than they
not
can
paying
handle.
any attention, they're waiting till the last minute, and when we demand the information, then it'll be forthcoming. Let's see what the next proposal is. And if there's something egregious in there, we can demand that it be changed or taken out. And one of my objectives for this, number one, we're still looking for a way to broaden the tax base. That's the issue. And the other thing that I've come to realize is that we need to have kids move into town, to dispel the myth that you can't have any kids move into town, you can't build anything because there's gonna be kids into town. We gotta get rid of that attitude and dispel that theory.
Well, all you have to do is look to Maine to know exactly what happens when you discourage young families and kids to
Right,
move.
right,
into
so
towns.
that's, we gotta get through to people. There's some people that are just blank walls and you can't get through that barrier, and we've got to dispel that.
Change is inevitable.
Yes.
And all you can do is try and anticipate,
Encourage
And,
the growth
yeah.
that you want.
and,
And that's
yes,
what
well,
we're
that's, I mean, over the years, we've always said, we want Lyme to grow, but we want to have it grow so it doesn't, so that we absorb the newcomers as opposed to what usually happens in a town, the newcomers overthrow the, so I think almost all of us are here,
Well,
because we like the
right,
quality of the town.
the problem is, that is not the message the planning board is giving.
What message should they give?
But
What message are they giving, Rich?
Well, when we talk about adding homes to town, it's how many kids, you know, how much is that gonna cost to put kids in the school? And you'd really rather not do it, is certainly the sense that I take away. And
Well-
I don't know if you're aware that Rich is putting all the planning board meetings on YouTube.
in
They're
fact, Jeff,
available to
I
watch?
apologize, I meant to say at the beginning of the meeting, we are recording this, so,
say hi to your family.
yes.
You're a YouTube star now, so you should be used to
Yeah,
this,
right.
right?
I don't remember starting to form.
But yes, so.
Public meetings can be videoed and recorded.
So in listening to this, besides the questionnaire, which, if we plan to have the first meeting on October 17th, when do we have to tell the populace that this meeting is going to exist?
Right.
As soon as we're sure it's going to.
I mean,
We need to get the word out fast.
Are we certain and positive that we can handle this on the 17th?
I'm not.
We have to get through a dialogue with the planning board so that we are comfortable, we're all on the same page. And
Right.
I see right now, a big question mark. That's how I see it.
Mhm.
And I also, from previous years of experience, you gotta start off with some sense of agreement. If you start off with hardcore division,
Yeah.
you're gonna be just like Congress.
Yep, no, I couldn't agree more.
Well, that's what I'm thinking of. Do we have getting together and understanding each other and all that, and still be ready on October 17th, when you gotta tell the people at least 15 days ahead of time this is coming, so that they can plan for it? Because if you're
We're
gonna
already
do.
beyond that timeline.
Huh?
We're already beyond that timeline.
Well, then I just question whether you can really, I'd rather put things off another week or whatever it is and try to do it right if we can't, if the 17th doesn't sound feasible. And as we've just heard, the planning, between the experts giving us all this information and the planning board, I just see a lot of fuzziness around. But anyway, I'll go along
The
with.
polite
what the
thing
group
is
wants
to call
do.
it fuzziness.
Huh?
Yeah.
The polite thing is to call
Well,
it fuzziness.
I was trying to think of a nice word.
We're on YouTube. Gotta
Well,
reply.
well,
The other one is FUBAR.
is what?
FUBAR.
Yes.
Well, whatever. I just don't
I'm
want
not
to
sure I
plan
know
on a
that.
date that becomes just a big stress trying to do something that ain't gonna work.
Sue, I think we are dependent upon you to see if we can have
So I
sooner
can-
than later, and I
I
think
follow.
that Ernie's point about putting it off into November, November is not a great month.
Nor is December.
No, December you
We're
can't do
running
it.
out of time.
Well, but you're better to not have it than have all hell break loose, that's all I'm trying to say.
I think that's right. I mean, when we think about it, we only have the rest of our lives. And we do have time, we always have time to make sure that we're communicating, I think, a common message, that we understand where there's differences, and that when we present it to the larger audience is looking to this committee and the planning board to be like, all right, you are the bodies of reason who have vetted this information, discussed it, and we would expect to hear from those groups a message that is somewhat unified,
Mhm.
or at least articulated to the point where they can say, and this is where we differ. And then people can make a decision. I think if the two groups were to get out there and just start bickering or bantering or.
Or bashing the consultant's report. Can you believe it? They looked at this and that's implied, that's not helpful for anybody. Yeah.
Because then the confidence in the process is lost. So I think you are wise to have a meeting with the planning committee, planning board, planning group.
Planning board.
Okay, planning board, and for both parties to say, okay, this is the information that we're operating from. And these are why we come to these conclusions. And then have a healthy debate between those two, identify those places where you're in agreement, and discover some places where you're in disagreement. And then,
And that's the point at which we ask the townspeople.
exactly,
So, some people say this, some people say that. We're looking at this data,
Mhm.
what do people think? I mean, that's a legitimate question then to ask.
and
So to solve this problem,
Mhm.
let us list exactly what we'd like to know before we tell people we're having a meeting. Because you've gotta know it before you tell people. The last thing we wanna do is tell people to meet at a certain time and say, nah, we gotta put it off another few weeks. That's just too negative.
Right.
So we need to, what do we need from the consultants?
Have you met with them to go over this, like in person and?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
We did have the preliminary one, and then back in August.
So we need the
We have
new,
been providing them with feedback since that time. They were supposed to get some information, revised information to us.
so we need that.
That's
We can't
really
move
the
without
first,
that.
that's the first
Right.
step. Did the Zoom meeting go all right?
Zoom,
Did
It was fine.
Zoom, it was a Zoom.
Yeah, the teleconference, that went okay,
Yeah.
yes.
The other thing we need to do, what do we need to do with the planning board?
Sit down and discuss their
Well,
points.
that's really,
That's what we're trying to do, is to come up with a time.
that's the planning board.
And it looks like if everybody else can do Tuesday, Earl, then the Tuesday's gonna have to be it, because we need to do this sooner rather.
You're talking about next Tuesday?
Yes,
And from the planning board, we have to have a sense that we can move ahead as a two-party group?
we need to meet with them and review the consultant's
Okay.
information.
All right.
To see that we're in agreement and we're ready to move ahead.
Okay.
And I would say there's gonna be points where you're not in agreement, and you can articulate those places that you're in agreement, and articulate things that you're not in agreement, and each committee can say why.
So if we have these two things done, the consultants have turned in this revised report, and we've met with the planning board. What more has to be done before we feel confident of establishing?
It all depends on that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so
If we
we
have
have-
to, we have to agree that we can present a unified front with, obviously, variations within that, otherwise some people are gonna go this way, a little bit that way, but basically, we're within the reasonable area. But that's the area that I have the biggest concern, because I have missed the last meeting with the planning board.
Right, so, right, I mean, I think the thing we need to do is to agree that the underlying data is fundamentally reasonable, accurate, useful for the purpose. Because we are asking, what should we do with this information? Now that we know that.
So can I just from my experience, operating the school, I think there's a question of moving forward even when there's disagreement, because the community is asking for a discussion around this subject. And I think it's gonna take more than one meeting to get at least on the same page, where you agree and disagree with the planning board. And I think that there's a chance that you're gonna say, you might have to come out and say, look, we've done this analysis and here's what we find, and the planning board disagrees with us. Or philosophically, they could have a different position. They might be, look, we want our town to be preserved at the size that it is right now, which halts development. And then if this committee is saying, well, we believe the solution is development and here's why, then you have a reasonable conversation, you have something to present to the community.
Yes.
You have a planning board that believes X and a development committee that believes Y, and the community gets to decide what the community wants it to look like.
There's never gonna be total agreement.
Absolutely not.
To anything by anybody.
Right.
And we wanted to get together the facts, to present the facts to the community. Taxes are high, the assessments are high, et cetera. And these are some of the options and these are some of the impacts. Now, there are different approaches to how we deal with this. There's the Walmart approach, there's the museum approach, and there's a whole lot in between. So let's, but we can agree to disagree, but we're trying to get a sense of the community. What will the community support in terms of this? And I think, we are beginning to get a sense based on last town meeting and other issues that are coming up. But we want a broader coverage, we want to get more people involved.
And I think it's gotta be more than just the taxes are too high, because there's never been a time when people said, you know what, taxes feel just about right.
Yeah, I don't know.
The-
Well, that's the issue,
Yeah, well,
you know, it's not, you can't say it's not about that, because that is the issue.
But
And they're climbing at a rate that is not sustainable.
right, but it's only because we use language like that, where we're saying we're all headed for demise, that you drive anxiety up. When you can say, here are our taxes, here's how we're spending them, here are the choices we're making, because the town is choosing to do it. And the fact of the matter is that, I think a lot of the choices that the town is making are the choices that people have supported. And so that's why the taxes are where they are. And we can't say we want these things, but we don't have to pay for it. There is, other than getting a incredibly large industry that just funnels cash right into the coffers and costs us nothing, that's a myth.
The problem is, and I spent a good part of lunch yesterday having the same basic discussion on a statewide basis.
Mhm.
The problem, you've heard me say this again and again, the problem is you can't pay for the cost of the town through property tax.
Right.
All you're gonna do is drive out about a quarter of your town.
Right.
And that will just skyrocket your taxes even further. So it's a problem which we cannot solve. We can do the best we can with the tools we have now, but eventually, and that's part of the discussion which has to be had and come, well, I don't know which November, but one of the Novembers the next decade. It's
And
got
that's a
to.
statement that should be made at the end of the forum.
And I'm happy to say it, I mean, anybody who knows me has heard me say this for decades. And
But,
I've been a voice, I mean, I try, actually, we tried in 1972, and we tried, I think, I can't tell you, 88, we tried and we failed.
Right, but, given the information and given these facts put before them, they're gonna be more open to these kinds of things. And you have to keep saying it
education.
until it gets heard. Right, okay, can I summarize, because I think we're starting to go around in circles?
Well, I have a couple of questions. What time next Tuesday are you meeting?
We don't know, Earl, I have to talk to the planning board
All right.
and get their consensus
All right, all
to
right.
meet.
Okay.
And you're gonna,
And I will let everybody
Thank
know
God
as
for the
soon as I
listserv.
know.
So, we aren't going to talk about our meeting, or forum, until we know where that stands. Is that right? In other words, October 17th is off the table, or what?
That has to be a decision of the joint planning board and development committee meeting.
Is that, do we want to get a sense of this group as to what we want to do for that? I mean, is it premature to ask that?
We postpone that one and
What I'm afraid of, Sue, is if you get to Tuesday, which is October what?
9th?
9.
Okay, October 9. How many days between October 9 and the 15th is it?
the 17th.
8, 17th. You don't have many days to tell people we're gonna have a meeting.
Right.
Haven't you already told the people you're gonna do
That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to be
Not
hateful.
really, no. I mean,
Well, it's been
There's
on
been talk.
the community, Lyme care.
CCL.
We published this, which has the October 17th on there. We have notified people that the first one has been
Yes.
postponed. We haven't said anything about, so at least
We
some
haven't
people
made-
are aware that there is a meeting on the 17th.
Well, if you decide to have it, you go into it knowing that it's a process meeting. You're still in the developmental phases, and so if you can get somebody that can speak on behalf of the planning board and get them on board with the fact that what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring forth the conversation without any definitive, you know, position,
There never was a definitive position.
then you could pull it off, and you'll be more informed for the next one, for sure. Because chances are, stuff is gonna come up Tuesday, and then probably stuff is gonna come up from the 17th between the planning committee and this committee that will need to be resolved.
My hope is we have a large group missing, under 30s.
Mhm.
And they are certainly right now in the country, they're a driving force. And I suspect they are in Lyme too, there's no reason why they shouldn't be. But I think part of what we're gonna want is to get that group to speak out
Mhm.
and then work it into our thinking. But yeah, that's
Changing
pie in the
the
sky.
date isn't
but
gonna change that.
Pardon?
Changing the date isn't gonna change that.
No, it's getting people there.
Right.
I mean, so you guys can request of the school to distribute information on your behalf, and we'd be happy to do it.
Great. That, because that's the group we don't reach well.
Happy to,
That's
you know,
true.
and as I'm happy to put out any board minutes or any board's request for.
So two things I would just say, that it doesn't seem to me to make sense to go forward with a community forum unless we have this workbook. I mean, we have to present reliable data to
Right.
the town in order to get
Right.
reliable feedback. And I would, if once we get a joint meeting with the planning board scheduled, hopefully we can use that as leverage against the analysts and say, look, we're meeting on Tuesday, you need to give us this by the
Right.
end of the week. And just
Right.
put them on a deadline.
Are you comfortable now, Sue?
I'm gonna
Because you're-
summarize what we've got, the message I'm going forward with. If everybody has said everything they want. Okay, number one, we agree that we're not gonna try and come up with another $4,400 that we can do the last two ourselves, between all the people we have involved. And we have to ask the consultants to agree to include any new information that comes from sections 2 and 3 into their final report. 3, that we should look at us trying to do a Saturday meeting to catch those 30 people who work Monday through Friday. And as far as this committee is concerned, everyone but Earl can meet on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock with the planning board if we get there. And the big question is, do we go ahead with the 17th? Does that summarize it?
I think there's
So,
a.
and then the first step is to have consensus between the planning board and this group.
We're not gonna have consensus, we're gonna have disagreements.
Well,
That's part of consensus, though, again.
Yeah.
no, I mean,
Right.
at least we're not gonna be up in front of the group fighting.
Oh, right.
So I think the thing to say is, can we both stand behind the information in the report?
Right.
As far as the objective data, there are this many
That'll
kids.
come out of,
there's
if it's obvious that that's not gonna happen, next Tuesday, then we put it off till next year. I mean, that's not the end of it, but we'll lose the consultants, which is.
Sue, did you want to include an item that you're gonna call them and say, we gotta have your final report by incorporating
We will
all
have
the feedback by the end of this week?
Well,
Now, through that, where's this questionnaire fit in?
it doesn't until we hear the information and see
Yeah,
what
I
we
just-
get developed.
I have just two comments to make on the questionnaire. When I went through it, which I didn't,
Which version?
huh?
Which version?
Pardon me?
Which version of the questionnaire?
Well, when I went through the original one I had, one thing I had mentioned was, at the beginning, I had a 1.5 line purpose. I didn't feel that the questionnaire really told us what the purpose of this whole kit and caboodle was. And then the other thing was, there was a note here, and the one I had that said, Based on the findings of this study, it is apparent that new development will not alleviate the tax burden for the average property owner. Was this clear conclusion at the forum? Well, I just felt that that was just pushing people absolutely in
I
the
agree.
wrong direction.
Yep, we all agreed on that one.
All right. Otherwise, I should have been middle with a minor rise.
Yep,
Are we ready to say meeting adjourned?
meeting adjourned.
Okay. Thank you.
Good luck, Sue.
Yours.
You need to come early tonight.
They were, looked like they've been doing some work out there today. and
Oh, yeah, we're going ahead, we're gonna go with it and do it. Start.
There's dirt.
The loggers are coming in.